you've been very vocal on the Fair Pay to Play Act that the governor of our state of California has signed into law. And you said that if this is the death of the NCAA, then that's a good thing. Why do you feel that way?
Well, because it's a corrupt institution, and they've been taking advantage of these kids for a really long time. They go under the guise of fair play and managing it, and every week you look up and there's something else going on where kids getting taken advantage of. I mean, they couldn't even let kids get meals for a while there. You know what I mean? When I was in college, it was illegal by NCAA standards for the team to even provide more than one meal a day. Like that doesn't seem like a super advantage. That seems like something that would be reasonably expected from a university is to feed their athletes. And the NCAA is the kind of institution that wouldn't even let them, didn't see fair or fit for universities to be able to feed their athletes until I forget who, one of the kids in the March Madness tournament was like, I starve every night. I starve most nights. And he had just won a national championship. And it was like, oh, well, this is a bad look publicly, so let us change this dumb rule, this archaic rule. And I think that until people really get inside look at the NCAA and what they do with the money and how much money is made per athlete, per player, per team, then people won't really fully understand the scope of things. People will continue to say, well, the athletes get scholarships. Well, some of these scholarships are worth $10,000, $14,000, $20,000. And these kids are working ridiculous hours, especially in football. They're working ridiculous hours every week and really aren't getting compensated fairly. And it's obviously it's a huge industry in terms of finances. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, so it's not just going to come down easy. There are people making $10, $15 million a year, easy money off the backs of these kids. They're not going to let that stop.
Well, and in terms of your situation in college, Richard, I mean, in terms of juggling big-time athletics and big-time academics, I mean, Stanford has to be one of the most difficult to actually navigate. Would you have had time to do other things, to be paid, to get paying gigs on the side, Richard?
No, but I think, honestly, I didn't have time to do anything because your schedule is dependent on time of year, whether it's winter or in season or spring ball. You got time to wake up. And if you're in the winter, you got winter condition at 6 a.m. That starts at 6 a.m. So you have to wake up at 5:30, get there, get dressed, be to practice at 6. That'll probably end at 7:30. You have class at 8:15, 8:30. You're in class. You're doing your thing. So you probably have meetings at 2 o'clock. So you can't have any classes from 2 to probably 4 or 5 o'clock, which is impossible in college, but that's a requirement. So, you don't have time to really do anything because your schedule is always filled with football or workouts or lift or, they keep you busy. So, but I think the big thing that'll change is that the NCAA won't be able to use your likeness. They profited for a long time just putting Ezekiel Elliott or whoever the star player is, Kyler Murray or whoever the guy is for that year on the cover of magazines, on the cover of tickets, on the sides of stadiums, putting them in commercials to sell games and things like that. And I think that will change fundamentally when they have to pay these kids to do that. Well, now you can show the universities, but you can't show the kids.
Well, Richard Sherman here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm with you lockstep with this whole thing. But I do want to play devil's advocate, if you will, while I have you on the phone line. The other argument that one is hearing about this is that the competitive imbalance would be thrown off. For instance, let's say Stanford, where you have been on record where it's not as intense of a football environment as, say, the SEC. How in the world could Stanford stay competitive, if you will, if there's a school that's giving $1 million through a car dealership to come and play at the university? How can that?
I would, if we're going to be specific, I would argue that Stanford and Alabama goes for two different styles of kids and recruits two different styles of kids. I'd say there are very few times that Stanford and Alabama are recruiting the same kind of kid. and the same exact athlete. So I think that in itself would never play out. Now, if you said USC and Alabama are fighting for kids, then guess what? One of those universities will get the kids. And you could say that all you want, but every week you look at these coaches in commercials, these college coaches, these amateur coaches of these universities sitting in commercials, getting $1 million deals, getting $1 million car deals, and I don't see anybody saying anything about a competitive advantage. So I find it odd that you say that there's a competitive advantage when these student athletes are involved, but never when the coaches are involved. And that's what's odd about this whole thing. Like half the time they say, "Oh, it's amateur," but when you involve coaches who are ex-NFL coaches sometimes, then all of a sudden, hey, the coaches are professionals, so they get to do endorsement deals. They get to get side deals with car dealerships or commercials or any kind of endorsement deals they want. But when you go to the kids that they coach, the kids are amateur.
Couple more minutes left here with Richard Sherman, 49ers cornerback, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. So when it all comes down to it, I know you've got a professional job to do. How do you see this all playing out? I mean, the NCAA has taken one side, and California's done its law, and there's other states that are going to be probably doing the same thing. There's one in Anthony Gonzalez, former Ohio State wide receiver, is a congressman who's beginning to fashion federal law on this. How do you think this all winds up with, Richard?
Well, I don't think the NCAA, like I said, is a billion-dollar industry, and when you have money, you have power. So they'll have political pacts in place to try to protect themselves and try to fight this legislation. But I don't think that the NCAA is in law. The NCAA isn't the federal government. You know, it's an institution. It's a private institution or nonprofit or whatever the case may be. So I think that if this law passes in California, other states will be lockstep, and it will either destroy the NCAA. And if it destroys the NCAA, then another organization will come in and manage college football in a more reasonable way and allow things that should have been allowed. You know, you're kicking kids out for having YouTube channels and suspending kids for doing things that regular students are able to do, and you're ending these kids' college careers, you know, when they're not doing anything out of the ordinary. They're not doing anything extra. This kid is filming videos of him kicking a football, and now he can't play college football because he's monetizing something that is a talent of his that's outside of this game. And I think that once all is said and done, either the NCAA will fold or they will change their ways substantially and become the institution that they should have been in the first place. And even the president today said, well, maybe we should have changed 10 years ago, but hey, we weren't in a position to change. Like you've been in a position to change forever. But when you don't have to change, you don't.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.